Good evening and welcome to Overtime here on WOTM. I am Gerhard Mathangani, joined by our normal Wednesday guest, but we had John in here yesterday, so we'll have Mark Everett Kelly here for the next couple of nights. We break down everything in the world of sports, including a very, very busy time in the NCAA Tournament, as well as the upcoming Major League Baseball season. And we also have football talk for Alabama, both as far as the current team coming back, 8A game coming up in just a few weeks, as well as pro day for guys that are going to the NFL draft. It's a very, very busy time over in Tuscaloosa. Mark, how are you tonight?
I'm doing all right. We survived the tornadoes of last week, and God knows what we have looking forward to this week. But we had a lot. Last 2 days have been just beautiful.
Exactly. And stick around to the end of the show. We'll have a good way to help out with tornado victims coming up at the end of this week. We'll fill you in on that. Meanwhile, coming up tonight, we'll talk Alabama first because we haven't had the chance to talk to you, Mark, about this Alabama basketball team. Their season ended somewhat prematurely considering what they were doing towards the end of the year and towards the NCAA championship. I know a lot of experts really liked Alabama to contend and possibly win this region championship. Yep. They did not win the region championship. They ended up going to the Sweet 16. What were your take both on Alabama this year, that game against UCLA, and kind of where they are moving forward?
Yeah, I think overall on the year, you have to celebrate what they did. Mm-hmm. No one thought that they would be as successful as they were during the regular season. They wound up winning the regular season title in the SEC very easily. They wound up winning the SEC tournament with a couple games at the end where they really had to, grit it out, and they showed all year they could be gritty. They played probably the best defense of any team in the NCAA tournament. I still believe that, despite the fact that they lost. The only disappointment I would have is that when you get here, I thought they were better than UCLA. I thought that they would go right through them. But UCLA has proven to be pretty tough. I mean, they have a lot more guts than I thought they did. They didn't play like that all year. Starting with Michigan State, you started to see that a little more. Michigan State game, they really should have lost, but they kind of figured out how to win in the end. Usually that's something this UCLA team hasn't done very well. But if I'm Alabama, the one thing that really stings me is leaving those points on the foul line.
That's right.
11 for 25 from the foul line, 2 for 8 in the final 5 minutes in overtime, and not really seeming to have as much confidence in their half-court offense down the stretch.
Right.
There were a couple times where they really could have made baskets that would have really put UCLA in a tough position, and they weren't able to do that. Then you had Herbert Jones going to the free throw line, missing 3 or 4 in the last minute, going there with a 1-point deficit with 4 seconds left and missing both those free throws. And he was kind of saved by Alex Reese.
Right.
But even Reese, there were a couple things where I thought he should have been out of the game on defense because he was hurt. And he got beat defensively on a out-of-bounds play where a guy snuck around and dunked the ball. And he just didn't seem athletically like he was ready to play, but he hit that big shot. You'd think that they were going to have the momentum coming out of overtime, and then they shot the ball, 4 for 13 in overtime.
Right.
Give UCLA credit. They made some really big shots, really tough shots, because Alabama was still D'ing them up, but these guys made real tough shots. And even after Juzang fouled out, which I thought would give Alabama an advantage, didn't. So you have to give UCLA credit. But the one thing that would sting me if I was Nate Oates was leaving 14 points on the foul line after shooting 10 from 10 from the foul line against Maryland and seemingly doing everything right.
That's right.
That, to me, will sting. And I thought they were better than UCLA. Would have loved to have seen them play Michigan. But then again, I got that game wrong, too. I thought Florida State was going to beat them, and I thought LSU was going to beat Michigan. So, brackets all over the place. But all I know is I think looking back overall at the whole season, Nate Oates has a lot to be proud of. He got his guys to really buy into what he was selling, and that bodes well for next year and the years coming up and how he recruits and trying to get some more of his players in there. Losing a guy like Jones, Petty, their senior leadership, but at big times, Jones, I thought, played the worst game of the year against UCLA. And it wasn't because of effort. He still did pretty much all the little things, but he just didn't. They didn't have that go-to guy at the end of the game that could get you a basket. Quinterly maybe was that guy or really can develop into that. But if you noticed, how many times did he get to the basket and just wasn't able to finish?
Right.
So I think that hopefully they can get a guy like that. But these guys have a lot to be proud of when you consider where they were, especially Jones and Petty when they came into the program and where they are leaving the program.
Exactly. You do a great job of kind of filling in some of the numbers and telling some of the backstory about what these games and kind of what these seasons mean. this is something that you came up with as far as the most wins in the NCAA tournament without a Final Four appearance. What I find interesting about this, just take a look at this. This is two things to me. Number one, to me, it's a good thing because you have the foundation. But it has to be super frustrating. You have now 20-plus games, and outside of Xavier, you are now the number 2 team overall in the country with the most wins without a Final Four appearance. I think I can see this both ways. From an optimistic standpoint, you think, well, we've got the foundation now. But from a standpoint that makes you kind of upset, it's like, hey, at some point, we can't get to 25, 30 wins. Another deep run next year, and they might be knocking on the door. Or deep run next year and the year after that, they might be knocking on Xavier's door, and you don't want to get too far out of here and have the expectation to be, well, you're a good tournament team, but not a great one.
Right. Well, we saw with Baylor this year. I mean, Baylor was 71 years since they made the Final Four. You can go long distances without making the Final Four. Alabama's never made it.
Right.
So when you consider Alabama one of the stalwart programs of the SEC, in football that they're the best in their conference. Kentucky is a team that you're probably as dominant in basketball as Alabama's been in football.
Right.
If you notice on this list, you have 2 other now SEC teams, which Missouri wasn't always in the SEC, but Tennessee is known for being in the SEC. So, and Boston College, God knows where they are now. I think they're in the ACC after being in the biggest. Yeah. So I think that probably speaks a lot too, is because when you have a Kentucky that really is dominating that conference, usually they're the best team, and they kind of. It's rare that you get more than one team in the Final Four from the same conference. It can happen, but I think that's really what they've had to work against. And also a lot of those wins came earlier with Wim Sanderson, CM Newton, and now you're kind of rebuilding the program where they can get back up to that. And I think this year was a huge step forward, and it gives a lot to look forward to. I expect that to not reach in the 30s. I think that the next time they'll be able to make a run because of how well they play defensively, how he teaches them, and how he really puts these kids. It gives them something to shoot for. I think I really like him as a coach. I think it was the best hire they could make, and he's going to have like a Saban type, legacy when it's all said and done.
Both John Petty and Nate Oates agree with you. They said after the basketball game that they feel like this season can build on to something better in the future.
And how will I remember this team? I remember it as a team that changed the entire culture of Alabama basketball. Expectation levels are drastically different. Recruiting's different. People want to come here and play for Alabama basketball. People think about Alabama basketball way different. I told our guys, I'm going to be talking about this team for the next 30 years I'm coaching. This is an unbelievable team with a bunch of high-character kids that stepped up to the challenge and changed the entire narrative of Alabama basketball. Best team I've coached. I mean, I had some tough, hard-nosed. I love my Buffalo teams, but this team was tough, hard-nosed with a lot of talent. 5th in the country. Pretty good. So proud of them. Wish I was still coaching them for another week and a half, whatever it would have been, but wasn't meant to be.
When Coach Oates came in, he put in a system that us 4 seniors bought in, and we did a great job with helping the other guys that just came in or our younger guys buy into as well. So I feel like we left our mark on this school, and definitely in college basketball with this season. And I know the guys that's returning that actually bought in and that's gonna get the other guys to buy in that's coming in. I just know that we left this program in great hands, and they're gonna continue to progress and get better every year.
All right, so Martin, now 2 teams have punched their ticket into the Final Four, both Houston and Baylor. We'll talk about these 2 teams going into this Final Four, and they did so in kind of different ways, and I was impressed by both of them in different ways. Houston knocked off Oregon State 62-46 yesterday, and then Baylor beat Arkansas, the SEC's last chance to get a team into the Final Four. Final score in that one was 81-72. A lot of people think that this Baylor team probably could be the team that upsets Gonzaga, and Gonzaga, as of right now, looks to be the team to beat in college basketball. But for the 2 teams that are officially in as of right now, what you take away from both the Cougars as well as the Bears?
I think Baylor, you have just balanced scoring. You have 5 guys, 5 guards, Teague, Mitchell, Butler, Flagler, and Mayer, all averaging over 9.5 points per game. Different guys step up in different games. You had Teague score 22 against Arkansas and Hartford, Then you had Flagler and Butler score 16, one against Villanova, one against Wisconsin. So they bring, if one guy's not shooting well, they're able to share the offense. And you saw with Alabama when you need guys, a number of guys, to pick up when you're not shooting the ball well. And I think Butler really has that as far as depth and scoring. As far as Houston just pounds you on the offensive boards.
That's right.
They absolutely brutalize you. They've out-rebounded their opponents 58-22 on the offensive boards. They play great defense, holding opponents to under 40% shooting from the field in the NCAA tournament, but also free throws. They get to the free throw line 21 times a game. So they exhaust their opponent, and I think they're physical, and unlike their predecessors of Fly Sama Jama back in the early 80s, these guys don't get out and run, and they're not real pretty, but they really kind of bend you to their submission, and they force you to play ugly. And they are just they are hard workers, kind of lunch pail guys, salt of the earth type guys, and they really represent the state of Texas really well.
One thing you broke down was Baylor's defense, especially in the second half in their previous two games, and you mentioned it, the fact that they are guarding that three-point line very, very well right now, and you can see it by the combined numbers. They're 0 of 16, and they're also playing great on the perimeter.
Yeah, I mean, that's Baylor's their defensive part of the game, too. Outside of their balanced scoring, they also get out and defend the three very well. And in these games in the second half, they have absolutely shut down the opponent. 0 for 16 combined from three-point range. You know, there comes a time at a game where the winning teams know this is winning time. And there are going to be no easy shots. There are going to be no second shots. And we're going to win the game here by doing the things we do well. Defensively, they really limit the amount of opportunities their opponents have from three-point range while kind of getting as many as they can with their 4 or 5 guards that they rotate in and out.
Houston, on the other side, meanwhile, they've been to the Final Four before, and they have a rich tradition. It goes all the way back to the 60s. One thing I found interesting, though, there's one thing in common: a whole lot of L's late and deep into the tournament. What do you expect of the Cougars this year?
Well, it's funny. The Georgetown, and then you have the NC State with Jimmy V and the hug, running around looking for hugs. They were very athletic teams. They were teams that could get out and score. They were very exciting teams, led by Drexler and Akeem Olajuwon, 2 Hall of Famers. This team is totally opposite. These guys will defend you, and they will really make you hate playing basketball after a little while because of how tough they are. And then even the late 60s teams with Elvin Hayes, they were great as far as scoring the ball. They ended UCLA's winning streak. So I think this is a different representation of what Houston's been known for. And I think these guys really set themselves up to be a team that can succeed not only this year, and I like their chances in the Final Four, but also for the years to come because of the type of defense they play, a lot like Alabama.
So the third time may be a charm for the Cougars. Get back in the Final Four. Can they get back into the national championship? We will see. However, there's one thing in common with both these teams that are in. They're both from the Lone Star State, both Baylor and Houston from the state of Texas. And one of the things that you found out is the fact that that is a common theme since 1975 with two, not necessarily Texas, but a pair of states that you are very synonymous with basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I thought there would be more of this when you consider or California at least, or North Carolina. But no, not really that many. Outside, North Carolina, both in 91 and 77, and not the Duke you would think of in 77, UNC Charlotte, which now goes by Charlotte,
right.
And then Kentucky in 75. If I would have went back, this is only since 75. I didn't really have the time to go back and look beyond that, which I'm sure you could have found more. But just goes to show you how rare it is to have two teams from the same state. A lot to be proud of in the state of Texas right now.
Exactly, and also from the state of Texas, the Baylor Bears on the women's side, they played yesterday, and they had a great shot against UConn, and they didn't end up making it as well on a controversial call there. So Baylor basketball doing pretty well. We'll see if they can cap it all off with one of these teams in the national championship coming up next week. Meanwhile, we have two teams already in. Two regions have been decided. The Midwest region and the South region has both been decided now. Gonzaga's all but sewn up their game against USC. What do you make of the Michigan-UCLA game? And since I won't see you between now and by the time we finish all this whole thing up, what's your expectations moving forward?
Well, I got them both wrong. Okay, I thought Florida State and Alabama would be in this game. But Michigan is a team that has shown they could win without one of their best players. UCLA has proved me wrong all tournament by being this tough, gritty team. So I still think Michigan's the better team, obviously. UCLA, the scoring that I didn't think they had against Alabama showcased themselves pretty well. They had guys other than Juzang come out and make big shots. So they're a wild card right now. I like what I see in them as far as their effort, as far as their will, and they've really shown a lot of grit and toughness that I didn't think UCLA has. They kind of take after their coach. You see his dad in the crowd. That's what you see. You see those two, old coaches. And I think they've given, UCLA is known for John Wooden and kind of finesse type basketball. These guys really come after you, and they play gritty, and they play rough, and they play tough, and they really use the most of the talent they have.
Great stuff. Coming up next here, we'll talk football. Alabama holding its Pro Day number 2. We'll talk Mac Jones. Lots of rumors about him maybe sliding up the draft board. We'll discuss it next.